Yeah, my name's Pat Herdsman. I'm a internal auditor for the Human Resources Department at the Board of Shepherding and Livestock. Here outside Bethlehem, chat with a few shepherds about a disturbance they may have seen.
Yeah, there was this crazy light and a super loud noise, and this person with wings was there.
Yeah, this sort of thing happens all the time. The mind just starts filling in gaps on its own kind of thing.
Hey, good morning, everybody. If you're not Office fans, sorry. So good to see you guys. If you're new here today, my name is John Wagler, and I'm part of the team here. And just so thrilled that you decided to join us on this holiday weekend. I hope you guys had a great Thanksgiving and ate plenty and are ready to work it off now, right? Like, that's the deal. And so I'm just so happy that you're here. As Josh said earlier, we put a lot of time and effort into making this place a safe place to explore your faith, and that's why we do this every single week, not only just on Sundays, but we want that in all of our groups and everything that we do here. And so just so happy that you're here today. And so we are going to be starting this new series called Can I Get a Witness? And we'll get in there in a second. But a couple of quick things first. First of all, if you weren't here last Sunday and you want to participate in our share offering, we are running it through today. And so these are all the share offering recipients this year. And I want to tell you where we are at, because I'm not good at keeping surprises, but Lacey gives me a hard time about that, so out of fear, I won't. But I will just say that it's really good, and we're really close to hitting a nice turning point and a pretty significant number. And so if you want to be a part of that, on your seat on the opposite side of Cher's picture, you will see ways to do that, and up there are the directions. And just make sure that when you give online, or if you write a check, or even if you're giving cash and you put it in an envelope, make sure you put share on there. When you're online, on the pull-down menu, there's a way to do it where you can highlight share, so we know what it's geared towards as well. So thank you guys so much for participating in that. I can't wait to announce it next week, what the final number will be. And also for all you guys that kind of accepted the challenge of last week too, of becoming a regular giver here, choosing a percentage and doing that on a regular basis. It's awesome to see that as well. Also, we've got Christmas coming, right? Just quick little polling. We've picked the Christmas Eve times, but we're kind of going back and forth a little bit. We just wanted to see how many of you guys are working a normal day on Christmas Eve. Is anybody? Like 9 of it? Okay. All right, we just wanted to make sure. So right now we have services at 9, 11, and 4 on Christmas Eve. And so we're just trying to make sure that there wasn't like this wave of people that couldn't be able to make that or something. And so we're just trying to pay attention to that. So we might add another one for those that can't come in any of those times. We're trying to figure that out still. So, but we're excited for what's coming on Christmas Eve as well. All right, so we have this Can I Get a Witness? And as I was reading through the Christmas story a couple months ago in preparation for this series, I think when we look through the story, I think there are different characters we can resonate with if you listen, or as you read the story. So for some of us, we might say, it's the wise men coming because we're late to everything. Or maybe it's, you like the angels because you think you're angelic, which is cool. Or maybe it's definitely not Jesus. You're not that. And so there's maybe you resonate with Herod for some reason or another. You're just in a rough stage of life or something like that. But as I read Luke chapter 2, I started thinking about how all of us, if we call ourselves a Christian, so if you're not a Christian in here, that's okay. But if you call yourself a Christian, we should all resonate with the shepherds. And I wanted to, this is where kind of this whole Can I Get a Witness came from. Because in Luke chapter 2, here's what it says. It says, when the angels had returned to heaven, the shepherds said to each other, "Let's go to Bethlehem. Let's see this thing that has happened, which the Lord has told us about." They hurried to the village and found Mary and Joseph, and there was the baby lying in a manger. After seeing him, the shepherds told everyone what had happened and what the angel had said to them about this child. All who heard the shepherd's story were astonished, but Mary kept all these things in her heart and thought about them often. The shepherds went back to their flocks, glorifying and praising God for all they had heard and seen, and it was just as the angel had told them. And for, really culturally speaking, the Christmas story, just about everyone has heard it. And I think we can gloss over the story pretty quickly. And so when we read a story like this and when you hear the shepherds, it's like, man, do you see what happened to them when they got in the presence of Jesus? They became these incredible witnesses to what they saw and what they felt and what they experienced. And they wanted to tell everyone about it. That being in the presence of Jesus did something inside of them to such a level that they had no choice but to share it with people. They had no choice but to sit there and be like, let me tell you guys what we just saw. Let me tell you guys what we just experienced. Let me tell you how this has reshaped my life. Let me tell you what I'm going to do from now on. And it says that for the rest of the time, they just started glorifying God and all that they did. And can you imagine as those shepherds that every time someone said something, like, do you remember that day? Do you remember when we saw Jesus? Do you remember when we were there? I mean, they just said it over and over and over again. Can you think of something in your life that you get that excited about? Like you might have something, right? Like you might, I don't know, if you're a guy, like you get really excited when your kid does something special, right? Or how you compete on things, or especially men do this, right? Like if you're driving somewhere, you want to beat whatever Google says. And so you'll tell people about that, or you've got the best way to get somewhere, whatever it is. Maybe if you're a woman, like your dress or skirt has pockets, and so you want to tell everyone about it, and you got it for $12 at Target, like that's what, or essential oils maybe. You get excited, when you get excited about those things, like you want to tell everyone about them. You're just so excited. You just can't believe what's happening inside of you, and you just need to share it. Do we get like that with Jesus? Do we get so excited about what he's doing inside of us and what we've experienced that we just want to share it with everybody? That we want to be a witness, and all a witness is someone that has seen or experienced something and they can testify to what they've seen or experienced, right? And are we a witness to that? Do we really think about our life that way? Do we get so excited to tell people what is like happening inside of us, or why we make the decisions we make, or why we've carved out time we serve at church, or we give this way, or we live our life this way, or whatever it is? Are we so excited to do that, to be a witness to who Jesus is? I was thinking about this question, and it kind of, the start of the whole series is like, what is my life a witness to? Because if you think about it, we are a witness to something in everything that we do. No, you pick an area of your life and you are a witness to something. You are a witness to how much you love yourself. You're a witness to maybe how selfish we are, or maybe how greedy we are, or we can be a witness to who Jesus is. And so there are opportunities to kind of think this through, and this question then brought about kind of the main line for this entire series, which is this: our lives will bear witness to what we love the most. Our lives will bear witness to what we love the most. And this is a statement, honestly, for all of us to really kind of think about. And it's a tough one because if you're not a Christian here, which I'm so happy that you're here, but you got to wrestle with this too. This isn't just a Christian thing. If you're like a non-Christian, you've got to figure out, all right, when I look at my life, what does it actually bear witness to that I love the most? Is it just that I love myself the most, or love what I think the most, or what is it? Is it that? If you're a Christian, if you've said these words that I follow Jesus, or labeled yourself as a Christian in any capacity, you've got to wrestle with this too. And it's like, okay, what does my life really show that I love the most? Do I get as excited about Jesus as I do about some of the other things? Or do I love other things more? And like when it comes to Christmas, right, we can kind of blow by the meaning of it, but when it comes to Christmas, it's like, okay, let me just think about this then and start really thinking through kind of the different elements of my life that say, okay, what am I really bearing witness to? When I was thinking about this what was one of the best passages Jesus taught on this, and it's actually where we get the name of our church from. And it's out of Matthew chapter 5, and that's going to be our focus passage today, so you can turn there, and it'll be up on the screen, or if you want to get your phones out and look too. But let me give you a little bit of background to this part of the Bible, especially if you're not familiar with the Bible. Our Bibles are broken into two parts, the Old Testament, which a better terminology would be the Hebrew Scripture. And that kind of details out the story of Israel and God's people and the promises that God had with the Israelites or other Jewish folks that you might kind of term them as well. But that's what we kind of see throughout that. And then what happens is then this new thing happens based on the death and resurrection of Jesus. And then they write these letters or these books that they end up calling, and they kind of detail out this new promise, this new hope, and what does it mean for all people that Jesus died and rose again, and how does it reshape everything? And so that's where we get the New Testament. And then the first book of the New Testament is the book of Matthew. And Matthew was writing to a primarily Jewish audience, and so as they heard things, they would think things through a little bit differently than us because of the Jewish context and some generational things that happen there. And so sometimes when we read through things, we might gloss over it really quickly, but to a Jewish listener, they would have been like, whoa, hold on a second. This is what you're saying about Jesus, and this is how it reshapes how we think about this. This makes me rethink my whole entire life. That's how pivotal some of these stories were. And so in this one section of Matthew in particular is called the Sermon on the Mount. It's the longest recorded sermon or teaching that Jesus has. And we're going to spend a lot of time on this actually in 2019. We're going to spend 15 weeks on the Sermon on the Mount. And so, which is a long time, something we've never actually done here before, but we're going to do that because we want to go line by line in it. But we're going to take out this section of the Sermon on the Mount because Jesus was teaching these followers, and they weren't just Jewish listeners, but they were men and women trying to get in and be like, all right, and Jesus is teaching, he's like, if you were a follower of me, this is what it looks like. And so he starts off in the first 12 verses or so, and he's like, blessed if you do this, blessed if you do this, this is blessed, this is great, all right, this is what it means. And then it pivots on this little point that moves towards, all right, here's your responsibility to be a witness to something. And so in Matthew 5, verses 13 through 16, it says this, you are the salt of the earth. But what good is salt if it has lost its flavor? Can you make it salty again? It will be thrown out and trampled underfoot as worthless. You are the light of the world, like a city on a hilltop that cannot be hidden. No one lights a lamp and then puts it under a basket. Instead, a lamp is placed on a stand where it gives light to everyone in the house. In the same way, let your good deeds shine out for all to see, so that everyone will praise your heavenly Father. Now, to us, we think, oh, salt and light, cool. But to the listener back then, it would have been very different, because, especially to a Jewish listener, because when you had salt and light, there were very distinctive things that were geared towards certain aspects of the Jewish faith. And so in particular, the salt and light, they believed were actually just the Israelites, because they were God's chosen people, and it was just the temple. So the temple and the Israelites were the salt and light of the earth. All right, so that's kind of how they would have heard it. But Jesus is sitting here teaching here, and here's what he's saying. That's actually not all it. I'm telling you guys now, with this new thing that's happening, if you're a follower of me, you are the salt and light of the earth. Not some temple, and not just this small grouping of people over here. It's all of you guys. If you claim to follow me, you are the salt and the light of the earth. And so things would have shifted, and they would have been like, whoa, hold on, Jesus. And he's like, no, this is how it works. And so they would have started thinking, okay, what does this actually mean then? And we started discussing it in that way. And so I wanted to highlight two things in particular that I think are important for us as we think about this and contemplate what does it mean to be salt and light in the earth. And the first one is actually that we need some flavor. We need some flavor. And one of the guys I played baseball with in college, his name was Johnny. He was our second baseman. And he was a couple years older than me. And he was the smoothest dude I've ever known. Like the way he fielded a ground ball, the way he would, like his uniform, just everything he did was just cool. And so one day I was talking to him, and I was like, Johnny, why do you do that? Like, it was just the way he did this little flip with his bat, and then we were playing around in the infield, and I watched him do something, and I was like, Johnny, you flip your bat, you do this thing when you're turning a double play, like, why do you do that? And he goes, I just got to add a little flavor to things. And so I was like, okay, that makes sense, right? And so I actually copied some of the things that he did because I just like, he looks smooth, and I want to look smooth, so why not, right? And so, but there was a part of him that was just like, it adds a little flavor to stuff, and that's what we're supposed to be. When Jesus says, you are the salt of the earth, he's like, you got to bring a little flavor to this. Like, your life should add a little flavor to everyone around you. Your life should add something. There should be something that when you're around, they're like, ooh, I'm so glad they're around. Now it's going to be good. Now it's going to, you're bringing something different to the table that changes what was once there. And that's what Jesus' pointer is like, this is the salt piece that you're supposed to be. And this is how you can be a witness to those that are around you. I wrote this down. I said, when people look at your life, where do they see the flavor of Jesus in it? When people look at your life, where do they see the flavor of Jesus in it? When you think about salt, it has a lot of options. It has a lot of uses. Even back then it did. Salt was used to preserve things from decaying. Salt was used to add just a little flavor. And you guys know this, right? You're supposed to put a little salt on it. Some of you guys put a lot of salt. But you add a little salt on it to add a little flavor to something. But salt was used to preserve things so it didn't decay. Salt was used as a terminology about peace. Salt was also used, they would say this, that our words that we use are supposed to be seasoned with salt, meaning with grace and love and compassion. Salt was also used as a symbol of loyalty. In the Old Testament, it says that if you eat the salt at the king's palace, you're not allowed to speak against him because you've been a part of his kind of inner circle of people. And so salt was used for, you're supposed to be loyal to other people. Salt was used as a purifying agent. Okay, so salt was also used in any of the sacrifices that you kind of in the sacrificial system of the Old Testament. Salt was always had to be put on the meat first before it was sacrificed to God. There was something to this flavor that was added, that salt brought something else to the table. And so Jesus is saying to these guys, he's like, listen, you guys all know what salt's used for. You know the wide range of possibilities salt can be used. And that's how you're supposed to be. You're supposed to bring whatever you've got to the table. You're supposed to bring some flavor to this life. Now you might be thinking, yeah, but I don't want to be the person that's shouting. I don't want to be the person that's always, they meet someone and they say, hey, how you doing? I'm Wags. And do you know Jesus? I don't want to be that person. That's fine. But there's so many different options to be flavor. There's so many different options that God has created you to be with your personality and your giftings. That's you know what? You can bring flavor to all of this, but you have to care to do so. You have to be able to take a step back and say, okay, where would people know that Jesus, the flavor of Jesus is in my life? When they really get to know me, where do they see it? Do you talk about it at all? Ever? Do you share it with people? Would they see it in your thinking or would they hear it in your words? Or would they see it in your actions? Or how would this be? Where is the flavor of Jesus in your life? It's a question that we've all got to think about. Now, I will say this. Some of you guys are maybe a little more on the introverted side and don't want to be the person that's always going to be like, hey, I'm not the person that's going to invite people to church. I'm not the person that's going to share Jesus with other people. And I would say this. We all are supposed to be that way. It'll look different for all of us, but we're all supposed to be that way. We all should have this desire within us to see people come to know Jesus, and that we want to talk about Jesus, and we want to talk about it with other people. We should want that. And even if it's in subtle ways, we should still want that. Even if that you're so quiet that maybe you're trying to set up somebody else that you know is better at it. Or maybe it's a little easier for that. Maybe you're just kind of I do that because I love Jesus. Do you love Jesus? and just hear what they say, and then their response, and you can be like, you know what, let me help. I know someone else who can answer that better, right? That's okay. That's your flavor in that conversation, and that's okay. But we're supposed to want to be involved. We're supposed to want to talk about it. One of my least favorite quotes in all of Christianity, originally I was going to say I hate this quote, but it's not fair. I don't prefer this quote. People always attribute it to St. Francis of Assisi, even though there's no record that he actually said this. So it's kind of a lie, probably. But they always say, the saying is, preach the gospel at all times, use words if necessary. I think the person that came up with that just wanted to skirt around actually having to talk about their faith. We're going to talk about this. You've got to use your words. Yes, our actions matter, and our actions have to back up what we say we believe and what we say we're a witness to. Absolutely. And will our actions speak? Absolutely. No doubt. But we have to use our words. We have to be willing to talk about our faith. It matters. It brings this salt to how we live, and it helps direct our decisions and our reputations. If we are silent about our faith, then how much does it really mean to us? If we're silent about it, listen, you want to talk dessert with me? I'll talk about it all day. I'll talk about pearls and shindigs, and you get me going, and I love it, right? Why? I love dessert, and so I'll passionately talk about it. But wouldn't it be sad if I didn't talk about Jesus? Wouldn't it be sad if you got around me and you're like, man, you get hype about cupcakes, but you're kind of average about Jesus? But I wonder how often that happens to us. We get hype about a lot of things, and do that. Stay hype about it. It's cool. But when it comes to our faith and what we say we're a witness to and what's supposed to be at the very core of our being, are we a lot less excited about it? Are we I don't really want to talk about it. I'm going to keep that part hidden to me. And we just make excuse after excuse after excuse. Then we've got to ask ourselves, then how much does it really matter? Or am I willing to be a witness to what Jesus has actually done? So you don't have to be obnoxious. You don't have to be loud. You don't have to be any of those things. Honestly, you've got to be consistent. You got to be passionate. You got to make sure it's at the core of who you are and be willing to share and take a step out in faith to be a witness. I would say this. If we aren't willing to take a step out and talk about our faith, then we do have to wonder how much has actually changed inside of us. We should at least wrestle with that. If Jesus has transformed my life, because we'll go all in on heaven, right? When we were talking, we'll be like, man, I love Jesus. I can't wait to be in heaven someday. And that's great. I'm all for heaven. But how much has really changed in us if we aren't willing to be a witness in our life right now, here and now? How much has that message really transformed us? And maybe it has a little bit, and just about maturity and growth and all of that. Hey, listen, everyone's on a journey in this, okay? But it's all right, we take a step, and sometimes maybe we take a leap, but are we consistently asking ourselves this? Because you might be sitting here and being like, whoa, Wags, this is so brand new to me. I'm not sure about certain things. Well, here's what I would say. You could be in a conversation and be like, man, I'm doing this whole Jesus thing right now. I am so new to it, but I am different. And then someone might say, how are you different? I'm not sure, but I'm different. I'm part of this journey now, and it's just starting, but I know there's something different in me. We become a witness to the transformation of who Jesus really is. Jesus then goes down, he says, at the end of verse 13, he says, what happens? It'll be thrown out and trampled underfoot or worthless. And why does he say that? And the terminology or the phrasing that's actually used in that scripture is really geared more towards this idea of foolishness, making poor decisions. It kind of links in the same way that all wisdom literature was used. And so when he starts talking about being trampled underfoot, and it's we kind of see this, don't we? We see that when we start getting silent about what Jesus taught, when we start really not thinking about what Jesus taught and letting it shape our lives, then the end result is then we start making foolish decisions. And so Jesus would say, that's when you lose your saltiness. That's when it feels like things get trampled. And that's when it feels like maybe evil's winning in your life, or darkness is winning in your life, or whatever. But we feel that way because, you know what? We've almost gotten hesitant to share about the flavor we're supposed to have. That maybe, we're like, I've kind of lost that flavor. And so then I start making like other decisions. A way that I have seen this in people, there's multiple ways, but sometimes I'll see it like this. They'll be in church and they kind of get connected a little bit, and maybe it's just like a habit or a hobbit, maybe. But it becomes like a habit, and you're just like, well, I just go to church, but it hasn't really, nothing's like really happened inside. And then what you do is you take a step away from it, and you're like, I just kind of occasionally go. And then you're not involved, you don't serve, you don't give, you don't do any of the things that kind of really connect you to your faith. And then you kind of disconnect a little bit further. And then you kind of make an excuse of why you don't go back. And then you're just fully disconnected, and then it's always somebody else's fault. Well, why does that happen? Well, it's because at some point you decided, you know what, I'm just going to consume and make this about me and everything else, and you just lost your flavor, and then you just kind of move away, and you move away, and you move away, and things just feel trampled along the way. It even happens so much so that we end up not even caring about what Jesus actually taught. I heard someone recently say this. I don't listen to what they say, but he's got a pretty large Christian voice in the Christian community. And he said this when asked. He said, I don't get my opinions on politics from the teachings of Jesus. And I was like, boo. I don't even care what side you're on, but like to say that, I was just like, and I just sat there. I'm not saying he's not a Christian, but what I am saying is there's some serious foolishness going on there. So much so that he's lost the flavor that maybe he once had. So much so that he's completely disconnected what should be shaping his life, which is what Jesus taught in all aspects of our life. And he's ignored it and made some foolish statements. It's lost its flavor. Lost its flavor. I think, honestly, that people aren't interested in what Jesus taught because a lot of times Christians aren't interested either. I think that we don't take time to be like, what did Jesus actually teach? That's part of why we're going to spend 15 weeks to start off 19 to go through. This is what Jesus really taught. And start wrestling with some of the harder aspects of what he taught. But I think this is why when Christianity loses its flavor in culture, I think this is one of the reasons, if not the reason. It's because we disregard what Jesus actually taught. The second thing is this: let it shine. So we need some flavor and let it shine. If you grew up in church, in Sunday school at all, you sang "This Little Light of Mine," right? I'm going to let it shine, and I won't let Satan what? It out. Right? Hide it under a bushel? No. Right? I will not. Right? That's what you sang growing up. If you didn't sing that growing up, you're good. All right? So we sang "This Little Light of Mine." I'm going to let it shine. One of the things in the story of Christmas is the star, right? And I love this idea of even the star, because what did the star do? It led people to something. It led people to Jesus. It led people who were lost to be found. It led people in a certain path to experience real life. It led people to something that they could then be a witness to. And so for a lot of us, we've always wanted to be a star. And so this is an opportunity to really shine. This is an opportunity to really shine. That when we become a witness to who Jesus is, then this light comes out. And what happens? Whenever light comes into darkness, it has immediate impact. If we were to shut off all the lights here and we turn one light on, it's not slow impact, it's immediate impact. You guys know this when you woke up this morning. I said this last week, right? What did you feel? When the darkness was in and you kind of woke up and the light went, it was like, oh my gosh, like the light is crazy. It hurts your eyes almost. Why? Because of the immediate impact. For some of us, even the thought of light coming in, we feel more comfortable in the darkness. Like when you wake up in the middle of the night and you feel like you can still see? What is that? Your eyes have become adjusted to darkness. But when a light comes on, it hurts a little bit in the beginning. But then all of a sudden, what happens? Clarity. You can actually see. And what does the light do? Well, the light brings life to things. The light brings brings color to things. The light allows you to actually see where you should go. And so what Jesus is saying, that this is what you're supposed to be. If you're a follower of me, this is what you're supposed to be. A light to all of those around you. So they can see, that's how I need to be. That's how I need to live. That's how I need to think. That's how I need to talk. That's how I need to love. That's how I need to parent. That's how I need to love my spouse. That's how I need to be a friend. That's how I need to think about sex. That's how I need to think about money. Why? Because that light is shining in such a way that people are like, that's what I need. That's how I need to think. That's how I need to be. The light of the world. Now, what's interesting is, people back then wouldn't travel more than 12 to 15 miles ever in their life. And Jesus is sitting there saying, you guys are going to be the light of the world. Can you imagine someone being like, Jesus, I don't even go past Mechanicsville. And he's like, you're the light of the world. Well, what is that? He's like, man, there's something. Now, you don't produce the light. We don't produce the light. It's the light that's within us. Then it comes out of us. And Jesus is like, why would you ever try to hide that? You got to let that thing shine, man. I'm telling you. If you believe that light will bring purity and forgiveness and grace and truth and kindness and compassion and love and all of those things that we so desire to see in our culture, so desire to see in our own life, like if we believe that kind of light will do that, then why in the world will we ever hold back from it? And then why would we ever not want everyone that we know to just get in here? You got to see this light. You got to be a part of this. Everywhere, like work, wherever you work out, wherever your family, your friend, like get in here. You got to see and experience this light, and I promise you, that's going to reshape everything for you. And he's like, this is the way it's got to be. You got to be that kind of light for people to see. A follower of Jesus who tries to hide the light is no different than someone who doesn't know him at all. So if we've got the light within us, we got to let that thing go. And you guys know, if you've been here for any length of time, you know that I love scripture passages that say something and then say like, therefore, or so something, right? And I love in verse 16, he goes, in the same way, let your good deeds shine out for all to see, so that. Why does he say that? He's like, okay, you guys, you got this light, and you've got it so that you do something with it. Well, what are we so thatting? First thing is we let it shine so that people will want to know Jesus. We want our good deeds that we want this light to shine so that people will come to know Jesus. This is where we got our name Hill City from, all right? That we want to be the kind of place that shines in light. So if you kind of picture this, when people were out in the water and they would see a village shining in the light, they saw that as safety. As a place like, okay, now I know where I can go. That's one of the reasons that we have a safe place to explore our faith as our mission statement here. That's like, okay, that's safe for me to go. I know where I need to go. I'm no longer lost, that I can be found. I'm no longer living in darkness. Now things are starting to become clear. That's kind of city on the hill we're supposed to be together. That we bring this idea of safety into people's life. Why? Because the light is shining so clearly. How many of you guys have in your experience with Jesus have had an area of your life be transformed or essentially illuminated where you knew like, that was darkness, this is light, and it changed how you thought about stuff? So why wouldn't you want other people to experience that same thing? We all have it. And there's some other areas that, listen, none of us are a finished product, right? We've all got issues and we're working through. We want Jesus to continue to shine light into that. So why would we ever be like, I'm going to keep this hidden? We let it shine so that God's kingdom is being built. We spend too much time, I think, trying to build America's kingdom or the world's kingdom or man's kingdom or my kingdom, whatever it is. We forget that what we're supposed to be doing is building God's kingdom. It's to bring what? On earth as it is in where? Heaven. It's supposed to be God's kingdom here. And the last thing is we let it shine so that a heart oriented towards justice and righteousness is revealed. A heart oriented towards justice and righteousness is revealed. That we let it shine so that my life is about integrity and character and love and compassion and grace and truth. We let it shine in such a way that we fight for the people that are marginalized. We let it shine so that we stay sensitive to the injustices that we see in our world. We let it shine so that when people look at Christians, they're like, there's our answer, because this other stuff isn't working. You know, the share offering was our way, it was our way to kind of get us going. But ultimately what we want to see is that the heart of our community shines in such a way that we start answering some of the problems in Richmond, not because of who we are, but because of who God is. You know, I inadvertently made a pastor feel really bad a couple months ago, and I think I might have shared a part of this conversation with you guys, but we're roughly the same size church, and we were just talking, and we were talking about money and budgeting and stuff like that, and their budget's about 4 times what ours is. And when I told him our budget, and when he said his, I was like, what? And so and then they reach a different grouping of people in a different area, and there's some reasons for it. But he said to me, he goes, well, if you had 4 times the budget that you do, like, what would you do with it? And like, they use all of theirs for like different things. And I go, I don't know. I was like, I know what we need to operate on. I guess if you told me we had $3.5 million more, I guess we would just give away about 3.2 of that. By mistake, I made him feel so guilty because they use like all of their money. They don't give away $3 million. And he goes, oh. I was like, oh, no. I wasn't saying that you're greedy, you know, but the reason why I say that is because, man, I understand what we could do, who we could be, or I should say this, what we will be. We did What If last week for a reason, and it's to continue to cultivate this heart of like, we're not there yet, we'll get there, and we're going to work hard to get there, and we're going to keep challenging each other to get there, and we're going to do this whole thing together to get there, so that we can be a light in this city. So we can start answering some of the injustices that we see, because we know that at the heart of everything, that if people did come to love Jesus and live like Jesus taught, which I believe to be true, is like, man, if people just did that, a lot of things would go away. A lot. And so I want to have you guys do one practical thing, and I'm going to close this in prayer. This week, here's what I want you to do. Whether it's talking to a spouse or a friend or in your small group, whatever it is, I want you to do one thing. I want you to write out the main areas of your life. All right, so your friendships, if you're dating someone, if you're married, or if you're a parent, or your work, your money, your emotions, like meaning like with anger and stuff like that, whatever it is. Like, I mean, the main areas are like the things that you care about, and I want you to make one column like that, and then make make another column, or you make two columns, and one column title will say, it's a witness to Jesus, and then the other column will say, it's a witness to me. And check off which one what area of your life is a witness to Jesus, and then what area of your life is a witness to me. And talk about it. And be like, okay, I realize, you know what? I'm way more of a witness to me in this area than I am to Jesus, and this is an area that I've got to let him speak into. And just see what happens. Let's pray. God, we get hype about Christmas because, as we sang today, it's about heaven coming to earth. It's about God with us. It's about, it's not about just your birth. We celebrate the fact that your birth matters is because of your death and your resurrection, and how that reshapes our whole life. How that gives us purpose and identity, but we have to choose to engage that. We have to choose whether or not we want to believe it. We have to choose whether or not we want to follow you. We have to choose whether or not we want to experience the kind of transformation that you have for us. And so, God, my prayer for all of us is that we would choose you, that we would see the areas in our life where clearly we're not, and then choose you in it. But it's got to start like who we want to be at the very core, and then build out from there. So God, I pray that our community will be salt and light to Richmond, and then it'll start bleeding out into other areas here in Virginia and then throughout the world. I pray that we would want to be people who would add some flavor, and that we would want to shine, because we know that what you taught would bring hope, that would bring forgiveness, that would bring grace, that would bring truth, that would bring compassion and kindness and goodness and faithfulness and all of the things that we so know would change this world. And we've got that if we choose to engage it. So God, I pray over this season that we'll be a witness at work, a witness at home, a witness with our friends, a witness in all that we do to who you are. In your name we pray, everyone said. Amen. Hey, if you guys want to talk to someone further about taking some next steps in your faith, please stop by the What's Next Lounge, or if you want to get connected here, please do that as well. You guys, thanks so much for being here. Have a great rest of your Sunday. We'll see you next week.